Yep. You can move forward if you want. Yeah. Is it blurred? Everyone else can see it fine? Yeah. Okay. So thank you everyone for coming on Friday evening to Aussizz Group for this seminar. My name is Anna. I'm a migration executive here. Today's seminar will be run by Mr. Rajan Goyal. He's our migration agent in Aussizz Group. So in today's seminar, we'll be discussing about the general skilled migration visa. So that will cover 189 visa, 190, 491 state nomination, and 491 family sponsored visa as well. And we will be trying to cover all the state nominations as well, like for all the states. We will give you the basic requirements to apply for the visa, and what the visa application process will be like, and what the requirements are like. Just before we start, I know most of you have been here, but some of you might be new. So I would like to give you a brief introduction about Aussizz Group and what we offer. So we offer free student visa consultations. If you want to enroll in a course, want to get a COE from a university or a college, then we don't charge any service fee for that, and we don't charge any consultation fee as well. And we can do your student visa application as well. And if you take enrollment plus student visa through us, we don't charge anything to apply for your student visa. We'll do it for free. But if you do just a student visa application, our service fee is $660. We have another offer going on, which is free Apple Watch. So if you enroll through us, and if you, after completing 16 weeks, you will get a free Apple Watch from us. And if you are taking any education service from us, and if you refer your friends to get service from us, then you will get $200 referral bonus as well. So these are some of the promotions that's going on in education side. And this is for the migration side. So partner visa is for people whose partner is Australian citizen or PR holder. So they can apply for the partner visa. For that, we are offering free consultation every Wednesday of the week, and we also offer 20% off on our service fee. And we don't charge any consultation fee for temporary graduate visa consultation. So if you are about to finish your course and your student visa is expiring, then you can apply for the 485 visa, and our migration agents offer free consultation for that. And if you are currently on 485 visa post-study work stream and want to apply for extension, we offer free consultation for that as well. So some of our service includes helping you with skills assessment, which is a must for applying for general skill migration visa. So our agents offer help with skills assessment, MRT and AAT if your visa has been refused, expression of interest when you apply for 189, 190 or 499, this is a must. And the same, the 189, 190, 491 application and the employer sponsored visa application. So for all these services, except for the professional year, 110 consultation fees will apply. But if you decide to take our service, the consultation fees you have paid will be deducted from the service fee later. And after that, you don't have to pay any consultation fee. You can get free consultation with the agent, unlimited. Okay, so just quickly want to let you know that we are available on Facebook pages as well, Instagram, TikTok. So if you want to get any information, let's say WA state nomination is about to happen anytime, probably today or maybe next week. So anything that we get information, migration updates, any articles about new visa changes and rules, everything is updated on our Facebook page. We have got Facebook page in Vietnamese. This is in English. Just all the content will be posted in English and in Mandarin as well. So if you can go and follow us and like us, then you'll be up to date with all the migration changes and updates. On 3rd of September, we are also conducting another seminar, which is trade migration pathways. So if you have studied any trade courses like chef, cookery, or carpentry, then you can join this seminar to know what the migration pathway for them will be. And we have got 2 other offices. One is in Northbridge and one is in Canning Vale. So if you are worried about coming here and the parking is a hassle for you, you can always go to Canning Vale. There's plenty of free parking there. And if Northbridge is closer to you, you can go Northbridge office as well. In the bags that has been provided to you, all the information of our offices are given to you there. Okay, now I would like to hand over to Mr. Rajan Goyal to further the presentation for today.
Thank you, Anna. Yeah, all good. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming and most welcome to the session. So today we are going to discuss about general skilled migration. So we are going to go through the criteria for 3 subclasses, which are subclass 189, subclass 190, and subclass 491. So these subclasses can be independent or state-sponsored or family-sponsored as well. So in the state-sponsored category, we'll go through the state criteria as well. And I'll tell you about the criteria for the independent as well as the family-sponsored stream as well. So the first subclass, the criteria for the first subclass, which is subclass 189. Now, this is an independent visa, as the name suggests. So it is not sponsored by a state or a family member. This is a federally sponsored visa, so the department invites you straight away and lodge the visa application. You do not need any sort of sponsorship under this subclass. So you don't have to be sponsored by any state or a family member. So all of these subclasses are points-based visa, so you have to gather points. A minimum of 65 points is a must to be eligible, but we know that you do not get invited at 65 points most of the time. But in some states you do, but not in 189. In most of the occupations, under the 189 category, you need 85 to 95 points, right? So it's a points tested stream. You do not need any sponsor or nominator. You must be invited. Invitation is a must for every subclass in this category, whether be it subclass 189, 190, or 491. You should have full skills assessment, must be under 45. After 45, you're not eligible for any of these subclasses whatsoever, as soon as you turn 45. And you should have a full skills assessment for the occupation that you are trying to nominate. So you should definitely have a nominated occupation. And you only get an occupation once you get a skills assessment for it. You cannot just simply call yourself an accountant after you've studied Masters of Accounting, for example, from Australia. You have to get a skills assessment from a body that's been designated by the department to be able to call yourself as an accountant. And obviously for this particular subclass, your occupation should be on the list, which is known as MLT SSL list. So there are 2 main lists under the general skilled migration category, MLT SSL list and the STSOL list. For subclass 189, your occupation has to be on the MLT SSL list. And this is a permanent visa. Once granted, you're a free bird. You can do whatever you like to in Australia. And you can live anywhere in Australia. It doesn't have to be any state. So the process for the subclass 189 visa, so you check whether first you get a skills assessment for an occupation. As I said, that's a must. Once you have an occupation, you check whether your occupation is on the MLT SSL list, and then you should have a minimum of 65 points, but it's very unlikely that you'll get invited at 65 points. So try and gather as many points as you can. So let's say if you're nominating an occupation called software engineer, I would say try and gather 95 points, which are not difficult if you're a young person who's studied in Australia and have good English and everything. So you submit an expression of interest after that. An expression of interest can be submitted at as low as 65 points. Then you just have to wait for the invitation. Once you get the invitation, you have 60 days to lodge the visa application, and you lodge the visa application within the 60 days of the invitation. So this is the process for the 189 visa. So you need a minimum of 6 each in IELTS to be eligible for 189 visa. But normally at 6 each, although you do become eligible, we don't get any points for English. So unless you have 7 each, you don't get any points for English. At 7 each, you get 10 points. And if you've got 8 each or equivalent in PTE, then you get 20 points for the English. And these are the basic requirements. So you have 65 points as a minimum, competent English as a minimum, successful completion of skills assessment, and you put up an expression of interest and the visa application. So these are the basic requirements that you need. But obviously, you have to go beyond these basic requirements to be able to get a successful invitation, as you already might be aware. So what do you get the points for? How do you get the points? You get points for age. So 25 to 33 is the highest points, 30 points. English language skills, 8 each or equivalent, gets you 20 points. Skilled employment outside Australia, you can get so 5 points for 3 years, 10 points for 5 years, and 15 points for 8 years. And skilled employment inside Australia, you can again gather points, 5 points for 1 year, 10 points for 3 years, and 15 points for 5 years. You must have qualifications. So if you've got a bachelor's, you get certain points, which is 15 points. If you've studied 2 years in Australia, you get extra 5 points. If you've got specialist education qualification, that means that you've done a PhD or in science, technology, or mathematics, you get extra 5 points. You also get extra 5 points if you've studied in regional Australia, like Perth is regional. So if you've done your bachelor's or master's from Perth, you get extra 5 points as well. So these are just the numbers. So numbers for the 189 invitations. As of July 2021, so there's only been one round, I believe, after since July 2021, and these are the numbers. So we can see that there were only 250 invitations issued, not much. So there are not many seats in this category. Minimum points 80 for any occupation whatsoever. Nobody was invited for less than 80 points, and the EOI effect date, which was the July 2019, nothing got picked up before July 2019. So July 2019 was the oldest EOI effect date for people who got actually invited under the 189 category. So are you all able to hear me? Is that all clear? Yeah? Okay, great. So these are the pro rata occupations. These are the occupations with the data, with the department publishes the data for. They've got these limited number of seats. So accountants, we do not have the data yet on the Department of Home Affairs website, but we know that mechanical and production engineers, the minimum point score that went for this particular occupation was 90 points. So you can visit the Department of Home Affairs website. They publish their invitation rounds there periodically, and they can tell, and other engineering professionals as well, nobody less than 90 points got invited. So engineering technologists also come under this Nsw code. So as you could see, the points threshold goes to 90 points. Nobody possibly gets invited under 90 points in the 189 category. Now the second subclass is subclass 190. Now this is the most popular subclass under which most of the people apply, because you do not need a cutoff as high as 189 under this category. Now this is a state-sponsored visa. So obviously you have to gather 65 points, as is the case with 189 or any other point-sponsored visa. But you also have to be nominated by a state in this subclass, which essentially means that you have to fulfill any additional state criteria that a state might have. So every state has got their own criteria. South Australia has got a criteria which is different to WA, and NSW has a criteria which is different to NT. So they make their own criteria according to their own demands and needs. So you have to satisfy that criteria. Let's say WA has this criteria where you have to study for 2 years under the graduate, if you're nominating an occupation under the graduate stream. So if you haven't studied in WA for 2 years, you're not eligible for WA state nomination under the graduate stream. So every state has this additional criteria which you have to fulfill, other than gathering points. But the benefit of state nomination is that you normally get invited, sometimes as low as 65 points, depending on which state you are applying for. Under WA, we've seen that people get invited at 75 points if they've done masters here, or even with in the vet sector, people have been invited at even 65 points in the past. So as long as you fulfill the additional state criteria, it's always beneficial, and you get invited at much lesser points than the 189 category. The other rules remain the same. So you have to have a minimum of 65 points, but you get extra 5 points from the state under this category. So even if you have 60 points of your own, you still become eligible because state will give you extra 5 points automatically when you apply for this expression of interest, and you meet that eligibility criteria mark of 65 points. And you must be invited by the state. So here the department doesn't invite you first. You are invited by a state first, and when then you put up an application to the state, and when the state approves your application, then only you get an invitation from the department. So department cannot invite you directly under this subclass. So you must have the nominated occupation in the state's occupation list. So every state has their own occupation list. So the MLTSS list and STSOL list is not applicable here. So you have to look at the state list, which is now the state could say that, okay, any occupation on the MLTSS list or STSOL list might be eligible for our nomination. But in most of the cases, states have their own lists, and you have to make sure that your occupation, which you've got the skills assessment for, is on that state list before applying. And this is a permanent visa as well. It actually you can stay in this. You get a permanent residency once this visa is granted. But there's a moral obligation that you have to remain in the state for at least 2 years, which has nominated you. They normally make you sign a contract, although it is not a visa condition that you have to actually stay in that particular state which is nominating you. But yeah, they do make you sign a contract where you have to live in that particular state for 2 years after the visa. But you become eligible for Australian citizen, and probably you become as good as Scott Morrison then. So these are the numbers. So under the 190 category, this is these are the invitations that have been issued until June of 2021. I think these are the invitations that have been issued and approved as well. So NSW, as you could see, has approved the largest number of applications here, which is according to its size as well. And W has approved 298, so total 2,848 places have been approved. And you have to keep in mind that most of these states had their nominations. They were not actually open for state nomination for good 6, 7, 8 months, starting from the July of last year, because they were closed due to the pandemic. So they only opened in the second half of the financial year. And since second half of the financial year, they've given these many invitations, which is a good amount of invitations they've given, to be honest. Subclass 491, this is another visa subclass under the general points-based skill migration in the points-based category. Now, it is very similar to 190 in terms of nomination. You are also, you have to be nominated by a state under this subclass as well, or a family member. I'll explain the family member a little later. So you should meet the state criteria, which they've laid out for the 491. Now, most of the states, what they do is let's say Canberra, they would say, okay, you have to work in my state for at least 6 months to be eligible for 190. But if you to become eligible for 491, you only have to work here for 3 months. So they just reduce the requirements a little bit for 491, because 491 is a temporary visa which you are granted for 5 years, and you have to live in that particular state for at least 3 years. Then you become eligible for permanent residency. You have to work full-time for 3 years as well and earn a certain amount of money as well. So 491 is not, obviously it is a temporary visa, as I said, but it can definitely lead to PR if you fulfill this small condition where you have to work 3 years full-time and earn a certain amount of money as well in each of those years. So yeah, so as I said, this, under the state criteria, normally what happens is they reduce the criteria, they make it a little bit less stringent for the 491 category than 190. But as far as WA is concerned, WA has exactly the same criteria for 491 and 190. It does not matter whether you are applying for 491 or 190, you have to still fulfill whatever the criteria is, normally for most of for the majority of the occupations, right? And so 491 can be state-sponsored, or it could be sponsored by a family member as well. It's not exactly sponsored by a family member. So all you need to do is you should have an eligible relative living as a PR or a citizen in a regional part of Australia. So entire Australia is regional at the moment, except for Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. So if you've got an eligible relative who's a PR and or a citizen who's living in regional Australia, then you can possibly be sponsored under 491 family sponsorship stream. So here, under the family sponsorship stream, it has nothing to do with the state. As long as you've got an eligible relative, you get invitation from the department straight away from the visa. You do not get invited from the state anymore. And your family member could be living in Adelaide and you are in Perth. It doesn't really matter. So you and your family member can be living in 2 different regions. So the family member, the eligible relative has a definition in the law. So brother, sister, uncle, aunties, first cousins are included in that definition. So if you've got any of those relatives living in a regional area who's a PR or a citizen, you can be eligible under that category. But we've seen from experience that the points cut off under the family sponsor stream can be around 80 to 85 points for most of the occupations, right? So you get 15 points from the family member, but I'm talking about the points that you have to gather on your own. So if you got 85 points of your own, you get 15 points from the family member. That takes your total to 100 points, and that gives you a good chance of getting invited under that category. But we've seen in some of the occupations, let's say in registered nurse, when they had a relative living in a regional area, people got invited at as low as 65 points. So you never know. There's no harm in putting up an expression of interest at even lower points if you meet the eligibility criteria. And again, under the 491 state sponsored, the occupation has to be on the state list because it is sponsored by a state. But under the family sponsored stream, the occupation has to be on the MLTSSL list, as is the case with subclass 189. So if your occupation is, let's say, community worker, which is not on the MLTSSL list, you cannot be sponsored by a family member, even though you may have a family member who's living in regional Australia and who's a citizen in here. So 491 will ultimately lead to 191, which is the permanent visa. And as I said, the conditions to meet this visa requirement are you should hold an eligible visa, which would be 491. You should have at least lived in 3 years in a designated regional area. So 3 years you have to live in regional area to become eligible for 191. But you should continue living in a regional area until you get the 191. Although you might meet this condition, that doesn't mean that after 3 years you can straight away move to Sydney or Melbourne. You have to continue living in a designated regional area until you get the 191, and then you can live wherever you want to. So you must have had a taxable income of 53,900 at the moment for at least 3 years to become eligible for 191. Yeah, so you should have complied with the conditions of the eligible visa. So the eligible visa is 491. So both primary and secondary applicants should continue to reside in regional area. That's the only condition basically that you should meet to be able to become eligible for 191. And for 191, it is not necessary that the primary who was the primary applicant on the 491 visa should actually fulfill this requirement. So even the secondary applicant can become the primary applicant later on for 191. And they can actually work full time and meet this requirement, and then they can become the primary applicant. Yeah, is that clear? Yeah, okay. So 189 invitation rounds in July 2021. So this is from Aussizz. Yeah. So this data has been collected from our offices, just Aussizz. So this is the points threshold that cutoff that went for various occupations. For chef people, this is 491. Sorry, this is 189. Registered nurses got invited at 95 points. They had done their bachelors here and had superior English. Obviously, otherwise you wouldn't be able to gather 95 points. And for the 491 family sponsored, again, which is invited by the department straight away, and your occupation has to be on the MLTSSL list. So all these people had an eligible relative living in regional Australia who was a PR. So we can see electrical engineer chefs got invited at even at 75 points, who had 75 points. So 75 points would mean that the person only had 60 points of their own because they got 15 points from the family member. So that's like a pretty good point score to get invited at. So 60 points obviously is not very difficult to gather. And 85 points, all these points include the 15 points given by the family member. So we can see that people got invited at 70 points of their own, 65 points of their own, or even 60 points of their own, right? For these occupations. So chefs were, I think, a lot of chefs got invited in this family-sponsored round in July 2021. So it was a really good run for chefs. So these are the points that you get for various things. So as I said, the maximum points for the age, you get 30 points in the 25 to 33 year bracket. And for proficient English 7 each, you get 10 points. Superior, you get 20 points. I've already told you about the experience, the points for the experience that you get for the Australian employment, and that's for the overseas employment. And you can only get a maximum of 20 points for the experience, whether it be overseas or Australian. You cannot get more than 20 points. So let's say you have 5 years of Australian experience or whatever, I don't know. I mean, you cannot get more than 20 points, even if you combine the Australian and overseas experience together. So the maximum points you can claim is 20. So if you do a professional year in Australia, which could only be done for IT, accounting, or engineering, you get extra 5 points. Specialist qualification, if you've got a PhD or a master degree by research, and you've done it in the technology field or mathematics field or science field, then you get extra 10 points. Sorry, I was mistaken. I said 5 points earlier. And then Australian study requirement, which means that you've studied a course which was at least of 92 weeks registered duration, you get 5 points. And bachelor's gets, PhD gets you 20 points, bachelor's 15, diploma 10, certificate 10 points again. And NATI, if you give a translating exam, if you've got if you know a second language which is on their list, if you give that exam, you get extra 5 points for that. Sure.
There are 3 categories which are pointing out to education qualifications. They are separate from each other. Right?
No, you cannot. You can.
Education qualification here is no point. Previous also requires no point.
Yeah.
They are separate.
They're separate. Yeah, you can get all these points. So let's say you've done a PhD, you get 20 points for the PhD from here, and then if you've done a specialist qualification, you get extra 10 points, and then if you you get 5 points extra for the Australian study requirement if you've done it from Australia. Masters is the same, so you get 15 points for masters, 5 points extra if you've done it from Australia, and then 5 points extra on top of it if you've done it from regional Australia. So you can get up to 25 points for masters if you've done it from Australia and regional Australia. Yeah. So that is what it is. So you get 10 points for being single, but those 10 points get taken away if you are married. But you can get those 10 points back if your partner has a skills assessment in an occupation. If you're applying for 189, the partner's occupation should be on the MLT SSL list. If you're applying for 190 or 491, the partner's occupation could be on the MLT SSL list or STSOL list, any list whatsoever. If your partner can get a skills assessment for one of those occupations, then you can get those 10 points back. But if your partner is not skilled, even if they can get 6 each in IELTS or equivalent in PT, you can get 5 points back. So as I said earlier, you get 15 points for 491 visa under the state sponsorship as well as the family sponsored stream. So you get 10 points for STEM qualifications, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, if you've done masters by research or a PhD. And 5 points for partners competent English, as I was pointing out earlier, and 10 points for being single. So yeah, they prefer singles. But at the same time, if you get 10 points because your partner is skilled, you would be preferred over singles. Then your expression of interest would be picked up before. Although you may have the same points as a single person, but because your partner is skilled, your expression of interest would be put on top of the single person. Then you get the married person gets the priority. So this is, I don't know what this is. This is so subclass 190 and 491, as I said, is a state-sponsored visas. So we'll talk about various state criteria as well today. So Western Australia state criteria first, as we are all sitting in WA. So under the graduate stream, so Western Australia has got two streams under the state nomination criteria. One is general stream and one is graduate stream. Under the graduate stream, you should have studied in WA for at least 2 years, full-time, face-to-face, unless your college, you could not study face-to-face because of the COVID, then they've made some exceptions there. You should not be subject to Section 48 bar. Your visa should not have been refused in Australia, and you should not be on a bridging visa at the moment, after your visa got refused. So basically, people who are in the tribunal after their visa got refused might not be eligible for WA state nomination at the moment. But we've seen some of the other states have relaxed this criteria, like Nsw has, Tasmania has. They have started nominating people who are Section 48 barred. So I'm pretty sure, I'm hoping at least, that WA will follow suit. So I'm hoping that WA will start nominating people who are Section 48 barred. No state in Australia is sponsoring anybody from offshore at the moment. So you have to be onshore inside Australia. So English requirement is a must. So 6 or 7 each. So 6 for occupations which are trade occupations basically. So if you're a chef, 6 each is enough to become eligible, although you do not get 10 points, which you get for 7 each. But if you are nominating an occupation other than the trade occupations, you have to have a minimum of 7 each for all of the occupations on the WA list. Skills assessment is a must. Without skills assessment, you don't even have an occupation. So there's no point. You can definitely not be eligible without the skills assessment. Another criteria under the graduate stream is that either you should have a 6 months work experience in your nominated occupation or closely related occupation, or you should have an offer letter of full-time 6 months work from an employer who's based in WA in the same occupation that you're trying to nominate or in the closely related occupation. Yeah? No questions so far? Yeah, please. Eligible for what? If you do not have full skills assessment, did you say?
Only a degree assessment we have. For example, if I have 2 years of study here,
Yeah.
in order to fulfill the requirement of full skill assessment, my occupation requires 1 year of experience in the last 5 years.
Yeah. No, you have to have full skills assessment. So provisional assessment will not fulfill the criteria. Unless you've got full skills assessment, you do not have an occupation for the purposes of skilled migration to Australia. Provisional skills assessment can only be used for the purposes of 485 temporary graduate visa, but not for any other purpose. Unless you've got full skills assessment as a chef or whatever occupation you're trying to nominate, you're not eligible. You do not have an occupation for the purposes of general skilled migration. That's it. So the way WA sends out invitations is a little different to other states. So WA does not necessarily consider the highest points as the invitation criteria for inviting people first. In fact, it places the points criteria at the bottommost. So people with PhD in the high, they've got 2 sectors, right? One is higher education sector, one is VET sector, vocational education and training sector. So if you're in the higher education sector, people who've done PhD or masters will get invited first, and then people with bachelor's or honors degree, and then bachelor's degree, honors degree, then bachelor's degree. Well, this doesn't seem to be true actually. No, it's just forget about this work experience and English language proficiency. So after the bachelor's degree will come the migration points. So people with masters will get invited first, even though there could be somebody sitting with a bachelor's with 90 points, and there's a master's with 60 points. The person with 60 points who's done a master's will get invited first. So that's how WA sends out invitations. So that's why people who are doing chef courses, they've been advised to do advanced diplomas, because they will get priority over the diploma holders, because the WA doesn't invite people with highest points first, but rather with the highest qualification first. So in the VET sector, this would amount to people who have done advanced diplomas will get invited first, and then diplomas, and then certificates, and then the highest points. So these are the list of occupations which are in the graduate stream occupation list. As you could see, there are a lot of occupations there. So all of these occupations are eligible for 190 and 491 both, but some of these occupations are only eligible for 491. The occupation which has a third Y requires you to get a job offer letter from an employer based in regional WA. You cannot get a job offer letter from an employer inside Perth. It has to be from outside Perth in regional WA. But there are very few occupations which have a third Y in front of them. Most of the occupations are just 2 Ys. So graduate stream occupation list continuing. So very similar. Most of the occupations are available for 190 and 491 both, but some of them are just for 491. Mixed crop farmer, not very popular occupation. So it is the state graduate list. That's right. So if you just type WA state nomination on Google, you'll get the WA migration website, and then you can see all of this information there. So as I was saying earlier, WA has 2 streams. One is graduate stream, the other is general stream. So this is general stream. Under the general stream, they have got 2 schedules. One is Schedule 1 and one is Schedule 2. Schedule 2 was very recently introduced, which was last month, I think on 5th of July 2021. Earlier, they just used to have Schedule 1. So yeah, I'll just show you the. So this is Schedule 1 occupation list. As you could see, it's the medical related occupations are on this list. So a hospital pharmacist, dentist, clinical psychologist, audiologist, a neurosurgeon. But the most popular occupations on this list are registered nurse. So registered nurse are all on Schedule 1 of the general stream. They're not on the graduate occupation list or on the Schedule 2. So this is Schedule 1 list continued. So as you could see, all registered nurses are on this list. So we've got almost all the registered nurses on this list now. Yeah. Yeah, I'll go through the requirements in a second. So there's no slide for general Schedule 1 requirement. That's graduate stream again. Yeah, okay. So yeah, so this is a slide that we've got for Schedule 1. Just forget about the graduate stream here. This is actually general stream Schedule 1. Yeah, so she's just changing it right now for the future seminars. So again, for the Schedule 1, so anybody who's a registered nurse here sitting here, anybody whose occupation falls on the Schedule 1? Yeah, you are a nurse? Okay, that's great. So under the graduate stream, as I spoke about earlier, sorry, Hema, you had to study in WA for 2 years, but this is no longer a requirement under the general stream. You don't have to study in WA, but under the Schedule 1, there's a requirement that you should at least have 1 year of Australian work experience or 3 years of overseas work experience in your nominated occupation. If you do not have that, you're not eligible for WA state nomination as a registered nurse. You get the points, you get everything, but you do not become eligible for WA state nomination under the Schedule 1 if you do not have 1 year of Australian work experience or 3 years of overseas work experience. The rest of the requirements remain the same. Onshore application, the applicant has to be onshore, you have to have full skills assessment. And the other requirement is, instead of the 6 months full-time employment contract that we needed on the graduate stream, you now need 12 months full-time employment inside WA. All right, from an employer in WA. So as I said, the third Y here also means the same. So as you could see, most of the registered nurse have this third Y in front of them, which essentially means that if you're nominating yourself as a registered nurse after having 1 year of Australian experience or 3 years of overseas experience, then you have to have an offer letter for employment of 12 months employment from an employer who's based outside of Perth and Mandurah. So in the regional WA, they cannot be inside Perth in most of the registered nurse, except for aged care, exactly. Except for registered nurse aged care, where the employer could be anywhere in the WA state. So Schedule 2 list was very recently introduced by WA. That is on 5th of July 2021. Now, they've put a lot of occupations in this list. I mean, so this is Schedule 2 list. So this list is available to anyone who's residing inside Australia. They don't have to be in WA. They can be anywhere in WA. They could have studied anywhere in Australia. I mean, they could be anywhere in Australia. They could have studied anywhere in Australia. As long as they've got the skills assessment for the occupations on this list, they can put up an expression of interest and they can get an invitation from the WA state. But the only criteria which is applicable to this the occupations on this list is that after you get invited, you have to provide 12 months employment contract for your nominated occupation from an employer in WA, as is the case with rest of the streams as well. So that's the only criteria. There's no 1 year work experience requirement. There's no other requirement. As long as you've got a skills assessment for one of the occupations on that list, you are eligible to put up an expression of interest for WA state nomination. But we've seen this. There's only been one round since this list was introduced. We've seen that the cutoff under this list was pretty high. For accountants, 491, it went to as high as 110 points. For some of the other occupations, it went to 95 points, 90 points, 100 points. So as you could imagine, everybody in Australia is eligible under this list. So most of the people, whether they're sitting anywhere in Australia, can have put up an expression of interest. And there are all sorts of people with like very high points sitting in this category. So I would presume in the future also, although this cutoff may come down a little bit, but still the cutoff will remain relatively higher. And we've also noticed one more thing, that out of the general, Schedule 2 list and the graduate occupation list, it seems that WA is giving the bulk of its invitations under the graduate list. So they are actually showing their loyalty towards people who've studied in WA for 2 years. They are actually reserve most of the seats for the graduate occupation list. But that is not the case with the Schedule 1 list. Schedule 1 list is getting an equal number of invitations as well. But Schedule 2 is not getting as high a number as graduate occupation list or Schedule 1 list. So this is just Schedule 2 list. So engineering, lots of engineering occupations on this list: management consultant, draftsperson, petroleum engineer. Lots of IT occupations on this list as well. You can see software engineer here, web developer, and most of the trade occupations are on that list as well. And we've heard this as well, that WA has kept like seats reserved for each occupation as well. So you never know, the cutoff might go lower for some of the occupations than the others. So if your occupation is on the list, there's no harm in putting up an expression of interest. Doesn't matter how many points you're standing at. As long as you're eligible, you should be putting up an expression of interest. So the crucial key points for putting up an expression of interest: if you qualify for both the general and graduate stream, you will be offered an invitation to the general stream first. That's what WA says, okay, on the website as well. So let's say you've got an occupation both on the graduate stream and the general stream, and you qualify under both the streams, you will get invitation under the general stream first. So that means that you just have to fulfill the criteria for the general stream, which means 12 months of employment from an employer in WA. If EOIs are ranked at the same level, invitations will be issued according to the date, submission date, if they've got the similar points. If you've lodged an expression of interest for both 190 and 491 visa, you will be invited for 491 first. You will never be invited for 190. Now, that's what the WA website says. But my personal experience says that this has not been true in the last invitation round. Some of the people who had put up an expression of interest for both 491 and 190 got invited for 190 instead, and not 491. So I don't know how they're inviting this time, but this is definitely what's written on the WA website. We'll take it to be true, unless we see opposing trends in the coming invitation rounds. Yes.
So do we need EOI for 189?
Yeah, expression of interest is must. Yeah, otherwise, how would somebody know that you are even interested in any nomination? You know what I mean? There's no harm. There's no harm. Yeah. But I would say if you got relatively higher points under the graduate stream, let's say, then you don't need to put up an expression of interest on the 491. Just put it up for 190. But yeah, so a lot of other factors have to be taken into consideration as well, but depends on a lot of factors. So Engineers Australia skills assessment has various categories. So if you've done your mechanical engineering course from an accredited university, like let's say you've done it from ECU, you just simply need qualifications to apply for the skills assessment. But if you've done it from a university which is not accredited by Engineers Australia, then you'll need to make career episodes. So 3 career episodes, CDRs, you'll need to prepare in order to be able to apply for skills assessment.
Do we need a 1 year
No,
experience?
experience is not a requirement under the Engineers Australia skills assessment process. Yeah, in any of the categories, experience is not a requirement, but there's an English requirement that needs to be met. Okay, invitation rounds for 190. We're just talking about WA state here. So this was the cutoff. So this was for the under the graduate stream, right? It's both, yeah. You got general and graduate, yeah.
All of these information are on our
Facebook pages as well, yeah. So people, you could see the developer programmer got invited at as low as 75 points, who had only done a bachelor here. 85 points, 90, 95. I mean, this is just Aussizz data. This is not the full statistics. But you have to realize that people who, most of the people who've done IT here, IT studies, they normally have higher points here because they have to do a professional year anyway. And during the professional year, people do score high points in the IT sector. So we registered nurses aged care 100 points for the 190. Well, that's quite a lot. 90 points, 80 points as well. Community health got invited. We have a restaurant manager in the vet sector, which got invited for as low as 65 points under the graduate stream. So this is just yeah. Minimum points. These are the points which people got invited at, not the minimum points. These are the points which people had and they got invited at. And these includes points for the state nomination 190. So 5 points you get from the state. So somebody who got invited at 80 points, a chemical engineer under the graduate stream, they had 75 points of their own and they had done a master's. So they obviously got priority over the bachelor's, and they got invited at 80 points. And the EOI, if they had put up the EOI just a month ago, on 25th of May 2021. So people are getting invited within a couple of months, even at as low as 75, 80 points. So it's pretty fast if you've got reasonable amount of score and you've got an occupation on the graduate list and you've got a skills assessment. Yes.
Like work experience is not mandatory, but you still have to prove that you have an employment from an employee or nominated application.
Yeah, at least, yeah, the employment can start in the future as well. Like it could start 3 months from the date of your WA application. So you should have if you do not have the work experience, then you should be able to provide a contract of employment from an employer in WA for the job. Yeah, it doesn't have to be current. Right.
How can I match my job contract? I mean, duties and it should be nominated. I mean, it should be nominated with my occupation.
That's good. So if let's say if you got a skill assessment for mechanical engineer, you apply for the expression of interest and nominate.
We require 6 months of job contract or
yeah, no, 6 months of job contract for the nomination. That's correct. Yeah.
But the 6 months of job contract should be from mechanical engineer.
Should be as a mechanical engineer. As a mechanical engineer. That's correct. It cannot be in any other occupation.
How can you do like title is different and
as long as you're doing the duties for a mechanical engineer, that should be fine. So how do you look at the duties? Can I Yeah, can we mirror that? So old computer, new computer. Old computer.
Old.
So you just type mechanical engineer on Google. Yeah, Nsw. ABS. So you look at the Nsw code for the job duties of mechanical engineer. So these are the duties of mechanical engineer, according to, so your duties should more or less match these duties. Otherwise, your application is not going to be approved if you do not have a job offer letter. I mean, titles don't really matter. Yeah, you could be anything really. Well, you'll have to prove that the duties that you'll be performing would be that of a mechanical engineer. I don't care what the title is. Right? You could be calling yourself a chef for all I care. Yeah. But obviously, it will sort of put the case officer a little bit off if the title is completely different from what you are trying to portray yourself. Sorry, I'm just trying. Thank you. So far, WA state nomination criteria is like more or less clear for everybody. So after you get invited, you get 28 days to lodge the state application. So within those 28 days, you can gather your documents and lodge the application. Once you lodge the application, they don't take more than 1.5 months. For the state nomination application to get processed, it'll take around 1.5 months. And once they approve the nomination, then you will get an invitation from the department for the visa.
How long does it take?
Invitation, 24 hours. So you get the invitation the very next day, or even the same day. It's an automatic thing. Nobody has to do anything. So once the state approves it, you get an invitation. And then you get 60 days to lodge the visa application. So this is the Nsw criteria. Nsw has got a lot of occupations on its list for this financial year. They've got a lot of seats as well in this financial year. So as is the case with other states, Nsw has two subclasses, 491 and 190. So under the 491 pathway, which is Nsw Regional Visa, you have to be, there are 3 streams. The stream 1 says that you have to be currently residing or working in the nominated or closely related occupation in the Nsw regional area. You cannot be living and working in Sydney, but you have to be working in a region that Nsw has various regions on its list. So there are like 7 to 8 regions. So you have to have an occupation on the combined list. They've got a combined list under the stream 1, and you should be residing or working in the nominated closely related occupation for at least 12 months or 1 year before you become eligible under stream 1. This is stream 1. And then there's stream 2. You have to have an occupation on the regions list. So every region in Nsw has their own list. So you have to figure out which region has your occupation on it. And then you have to, if you've studied in that region for 2 years, then you can be eligible under that category. And then they've recently introduced stream 3, or they've got stream 3 as well, where you do not have to fulfill any criteria. If you've got your occupation on the regions list, you can simply be anywhere in Australia and can put up an expression of interest under that stream. So no criteria whatsoever. So let's say you are a chef, you've got a skill assessment for a chef, and you see that one of the regions like Orana in Nsw has chef on its list, you can simply apply for the expression of interest. But I don't know what the threshold is going to be. No invitation round has been issued until now, after they've introduced the stream 3. But still, you can put up an expression of interest. And Nsw also says that they'll prefer stream 1 over any other stream. So stream 1, if you're currently residing or working in Nsw regional area for at least 1 year, and in some cases, even if you're working for 3 months, they can still invite you. You do not have to necessarily complete 1 year. So you can actually tell them, okay, I've been working there for 3 months, please invite me, and they can consider your request. but that's on a case-by-case basis. So, who? Because I don't know, because the states, possibly the states need people, and obviously they've got a lot of seats as well in the migration program for this financial year. So if the states deems fit that okay, this person is skilled enough, and they've made a genuine request, they've got a genuine employment in their own nominated occupation in the region, they can. So they can definitely sort of get invited earlier as well. All right. So Victoria state nomination. Victoria state nomination is currently based on the pandemic. So they've got this critical sector. If you're working in one of these critical sectors, which is let's say health, medical research, life sciences, agri-food, digital, etc., then you can get invited. You don't have to be working in 6 months. They've changed this criteria very recently, or 3 months. As long as you're living and working in regional Victoria in these sectors, you can actually put up a registration of interest, and you can possibly get invited. Obviously, you should have a skills assessment for an occupation as well, and it could be in any occupation whatsoever.
But the body doing that skills assessment.
No, the bodies for skills assessment remains the same throughout Australia. So they are common. Like Engineers Australia will assess all the engineering occupations regardless of which state you're living in. So Canberra has got this criteria where if you work for 3 months in Canberra in the occupation which is on the skill list, then you can get invited for 491. And if you work for 6 months, then you can get invited for 190. But you have to have a minimum of 65 points on the Canberra matrix as well. So Canberra has got their own matrix. So you can get points. You can visit the Canberra website, and if you get various points according to the matrix, you can actually get points according to that. All right. So anybody, what are your occupations here? So what are your occupations, sir? Yeah. Oh, you are a mechanical engineer. What's your occupation, ma'am? So you're studying a diploma here. Or you're studying bachelor's from Stott College? Sure. So all of you are basically interested in the WA sector rather than anything else. Sure. So, but
how likely are they closely related occupations
no, you have to nominate an occupation which is exactly on the list. You cannot nominate a closely related occupation. So closely related occupation you can get a job in, but you cannot nominate an occupation which is closely related to the occupation which is on the list. Exactly in the same occupation which is on the list. It cannot be in the closely related occupation. All right. For a registered nurse, it could be beneficial if you move to other states, especially if you do not have 1 year Australian work experience. Oh, you do have, so that's fine. That's absolutely fine then. So South Australia, I'll go quickly. It is very occupation specific. It tells you to have work experience for 6 months or 1 year, depending on which occupation you're trying to nominate. So you have to get that experience in the South Australia state in order to be able to nominate that. Anybody interested in Tasmania here? Not really? Yeah, okay. One of the ladies is, I'll just be very brief about Tasmania. So Tasmania has an occupation list, but you do not necessarily have to have a skills assessment in an occupation which is on that list. So Tasmania can accept any occupation whatsoever. So there are 3-4 categories in Tasmanian occupation state pathway. So you either have to study there for 1 year, or you have to work there for 6 months in any occupation whatsoever. Doesn't have to be the same occupation which you have the skills assessment for. And then you can possibly become eligible. If you want to know that in detail, you can always, Tasmania has a great option. If you are not able to find yourself eligible under any other state, you might still be eligible under Tasmanian state nomination. Not really. It's not extreme weather. I mean, it's much better than Canada and England. Yeah. Yeah. It's all right. It's not too bad. But there's not much work there. There are not many jobs there. Yeah, probably that's why. Yeah. So Northern Territory, again, very briefly, you either have to study in Northern Territory for 2 years or work in Northern Territory for at least 1 year before you become eligible. Queensland is currently suspended, to be honest. So we'll see when they open up and what criteria they publish on their website at the moment. So at the moment, I would say WA is the most popular state, especially if you are sitting in WA already, and it's very likely that you'll get invitation from the WA state. And we've heard that our premier has requested even more nomination places in the WA state nomination program than what we have been allocated. So they've requested to increase the 1,500 seats to 5,000. So let's see how it goes. So yeah, if you like the today's seminars, you can like us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, follow us on YouTube. And any other questions that you might have? Yeah.
I'm a recent graduate and I have a job. So how can I get seat 95 points? It's too hard for the.
I'll just talk to you in person. All right. So I told you about the points criteria, but I'll explain to you in person as well. All right. Is there anything else?
She completed doing her master's.
Yeah.
She completed her 1-year course in Bachelor's, and she has got a 1-year work experience also.
So
Actually, I'm going to apply.
yeah. Mhm.
To complete on this November.
Mm-hmm.
Can I put those points now?
No, not now. Too early.
Wait.
Too early. Yeah. You need to finish your masters before you get those 5 points, extra 5. How many points are you standing at? 75. And what skills assessment have you got? Registered as HK? You never know. You might get invited in this invitation round, which is going to be next week. Yeah. Well, then your chances will increase multifold. So yeah, but you never know. You might get it. When are you completing your masters again? In this November. Yeah, you'll have to wait for your masters to finish. No point. Analyst programmer. Channel stream. No, sorry. Could you repeat your question, ma'am?
Assessment of programmer.
Mhm.
And then this from the WIT state
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I cannot apply straight away.
No, you cannot. You'll have to get a skills assessment for developer programmer. So did you apply for analyst programmer yourself? Yeah, you could apply for, because developer programmer is very similar. You would be able to get possibly the skills assessment for that occupation as well. And that is on the graduate occupation list. Analyst programmer is not. Analyst programmer is on the general stream. You can put up an expression of interest there until you get the skills assessment for developer programmer. All right. No
I'm
problem.
doing PhD in chemical engineering, but it's a complex type, like it's a collaboration between India and Australia.
Yeah.
So actually, I have to go back to India after a certain period of time. So I spent here like 2.5 years. So I think I have to explain my situation. And like